So as I looked at this small puddle on the floor, I took my screwdriver and started poking around in this grate. And as I poked through one of the holes in the grate, all of a sudden, this little puddle started flowing up. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I poked again in another one of the grate holes there. And all of a sudden, it is now flowing. Like there's like a little like spout of water flowing up under the floor into my basement. And oh my gosh, did it smell. I've spent the last 20 years studying, teaching, and coaching people to find their greatness and take their lives to the next level. Along the way, it's become evident that emotions are at the root of everybody's successes and failures. Worry and fear are the enemies, and it's time to forge the armor and earn the tools to overcome the two things that could single-handedly destroy your future. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson, and I'm a life coach, a peak performance trainer, and I'm the emotions guy. It's time to take back control of how you feel, control of how you act, and control of how you experience life. It's time to become a lifer, a new breed of overachiever focused on living every minute to its fullest. We are responsible for how we feel, and no one and no thing can make us feel anything. Emotional mastery is our journey, and emotional education and intelligence is the key. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life. What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast, and I'm excited you joined me today. I wanted to jump in and tell you a little bit of an experience I had recently that was really crappy. And that's just a nice way of putting it, right? We'll keep this episode clean as best I can, actually. I don't know if that's even possible, but we'll try. So there I was, for I'd say about the last, oh my goodness, I guess it's been about 2 years. Easily the last 2 years. Now, you got to think about this. This is crazy, right? The last 2 years, my downstairs, my basement bathroom, the toilet has just been acting weird. Like we'd flush it and there'd be some like sand that would come back up after it would flush. That started maybe 2 years ago. I mean, it's been a while. And little by little, it got worse. And sometimes it wouldn't flush. Sometimes, it would clog way too often. So you're constantly trying to unclog that toilet. We got to the point where we just didn't want to use that bathroom because it was always causing a problem. Finally got to the point where it just wasn't even worth it. We unclogged it, but it just wouldn't flush one way or the other. It just had issues. Little by little, we just sort of ignored it and kind of put off just focusing on it at all. We'd use the other restrooms in the house. And I mean, not a great way to go about it, but it wasn't a big problem. It was just a little problem, right? It wasn't that big of a deal. It got to the point where it was annoying. And again, this is over the course of maybe a couple years. And recently, we decided to get a plumber to come out and just take a look at it. And as we suspected, the plumber says, well, he'd take out his big tools and this big thing stuck down and tried to, snake it out and all this stuff. And he didn't find anything, but the toilet still wouldn't flush. He's like, you know what? There's nothing really going on here. And so he went and looked at another thing in the sewage pipes, that go out, and he couldn't find anything. He took a big machine and snaked it out from a different place, and he couldn't find anything. He said, nothing really wrong here. But yet the toilet still didn't flush and it still wasn't working properly. And we're just thinking, gosh, we don't know really what's going on. So, and again, now here we are a couple years later, right? So this is taking some time to unfold. And finally, it doesn't want to flush this toilet. And my wife is looking for solutions. And, she notices the garbage disposal in our sink upstairs starts to gurgle and starts to make noises that it doesn't usually. Then she starts to notice that the sinks upstairs aren't draining the way they should. Now the bathrooms upstairs And in our top floor, we have 3 floors. And in our top floor, they're not flushing the way that they have been. So little by little, she's starting to recognize that there's some stuff going on that isn't normal. And so, she starts to look up videos, good old YouTube, right? Thank goodness for YouTube. What would we do without it, right? Uh, she starts to notice that maybe there's some other things that the plumber just didn't recognize. So we find these plumbing videos. So I wake up on Sunday morning, family day, right? And I wake up to, hey, I want you to watch this video on plumbing. Now you can imagine my thrilledness to waking up to, hey, you should watch this educational video about how plumbing works for the house. Okay, fine. I will watch it. So I come to find out things about plumbing that I had no idea about. Now, I don't know about you, but I didn't grow up learning about plumbing. But here's the kicker. There's a pipe that goes up to your roof. In fact, there's 2 of them that are essential for your plumbing. Who would have thought? Right? And what a great video to learn about, where you hear about all this stuff that you didn't know. And I got excited. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to have to learn about plumbing. And there are people out there that are experts at this and not me. But holy cow, we have this cool video and I'm learning about how the plumbing works. So it says, hey, you know what? There's a possibility that if your pipe there that goes up and vents these pipes that go down through your all your sinks and your toilets and all that stuff, so that it helps get air into the pipes so that it can flush everything down into the sewage. If those pipes up on the roof get clogged, then the whole system doesn't work. I thought, gosh, what a cool metaphor for life. Sometimes getting the waste out and getting the junk out needs the pipes upstairs to be cleared out. Okay, lesson number 1 for the day. That was pretty cool. So I start to go onto the roof. This is an ordeal. So we start the day, and my 3rd child, right? She's excited to go on the roof with Dad. So we take her up on the roof. Okay, maybe not the most safe thing, but she's pretty brave and she loved it. And so we had a good time going on the roof. And we go check out these pipes on the roof. We are like, well, I can't tell if they're clogged up, so let's go to Home Depot. We got some snake sticks that you can stick down to see if they're clogged. They weren't clogged up. So this was like a whole morning ordeal. Now, move on to the later afternoon. I come back and I think, well, maybe I can get to the pipes in the attic. So now I go explore the attic, climbing up into the attic and turning into a insulation dust bunny. Right. And I crawled in and out of just about every insulation and pipe you can imagine, and find out that really I can't get to the pipes in there, not with any sort of safeness. I mean, not without ruining everything there. So I realized this is a bad idea. So we get out of the attic, and the next thing to think about is, well, the plumber had mentioned there's maybe a like final drain that sort of is the air vent out to the sewage. And so I thought, well, I'll go look in the basement. So I walk into the basement and I notice there's a small puddle on the floor. And when I'm talking small, I'm talking like within my shoulder length. Like I could stand over it pretty easy. It was not a big puddle. And I kind of look at it and I mean, it's smelling down there. Like we're talking like methane, not good. You don't want to get out of the room, kind of smelling bad. And so notice this puddle down there. And I thought, well, okay, let's get some tools and see if we can mess with this a little. So I grab a screwdriver and I start poking around. And as I poke in through one of the holes, it starts like fountaining up. And I think in myself that, that's odd. And why did I do this? I have no idea. I took the screwdriver and poked in another hole, and all of a sudden it started fountaining up. And now this little puddle starts turning into a pond in my basement. And so I'm freaking out. And of course, it's 911 now. the puddles growing. There's sewage. Yes, this is disgusting. It's pretty crappy, so to speak. And sewage starts flowing up through the basement, and I'm freaking out. It's not very pleasant. It smells horrible. There's literally crap and yeah, coming up out of the floor. So I call for my wife. The kids come down. They get out of there because it smells horrible. The house instantly reeks. And we are freaking out because our basement floor is filling up with sewage. And so we grab buckets from the garage. We're starting to like scoop it into buckets and start to just like take it outside or something because we're trying to keep our basement from flooding with sewage. Luckily, my mother was visiting. She gets on the phone, starts calling plumbers, trying to get somebody there. We're just, triage as best we can. And in the process, most of my kids are like out of there. They're freaking out, right? And I don't blame them. It was horrible. It smelled horrible. But my third daughter, who had kind of been with me the whole day helping me, she came down and she was like, this is horrible. Like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I can't believe this is happening to us. Are we going to be okay? Is our house going to be okay? Right? Everything. And I realized in that moment that this was a pretty crappy situation, literally a crappy situation. And in that moment, I realized that there were some really good things that were happening because of this. And it's hard. It's hard in the moment when things seem to be falling apart. It is super hard to look at those situations and go, what is the positive that's going on here? And luckily, I had the clarity to think about that. And as she said that, I realized in that moment that it was my responsibility at that moment to be able to find the positive, to be able to look at the situation and give it meaning that was positive. And so as my daughter sat there with me, scooping out this crappy situation into buckets. And when I'm talking buckets, we're talking like those flower buckets, like the huge ones. We were filling up. We must have filled up 5 or 6 of those buckets. We had to just grab a cup, and we're scooping it out, just trying to keep from the basement. We're clearing out the basement. We're getting everything off the floors. And as we sat there, we made it into a little bit of a game, she and I, where we were talking about all the positive things that were coming from this and the stuff that was going on that, thank goodness, it happened. And we started with something simple because we couldn't take the big jump, because at first it was just shoveling a bunch of crap into a bucket. And that's pretty horrible, right? So we started with the easy stuff. You know what? I'm really glad to spend this time with you. She goes, you know what? I am too. I'm really happy to be here with you, Dad. We're going to get this figured out. And I was like, yeah, this is great. And then little by little, we found the next thing, and we found the next little thing, and then the next little thing. And ultimately, we started to realize, hey, you know what? There's something bigger going on here. And we ended up calling the city. And the city, by the way, if this ever happens to you, call the city right away, because our city was great. They came out. It was like calling the fire station and the fire trucks coming out. This team came out and checked out the sewage lines. And when I happened to be out, we were dumping out one of the buckets out into the street, because where else do you put buckets of crap? I don't know. We didn't know at the time. We were just doing the best we could. And this guy comes flying down the street in a truck, opening the sewer. Like, he had this tool. He would open up the sewer covers. He checks the first one. We happen to notice. He speeds down the street, flies open next to the one by our house, opens it up, looks down it, closes it again, flies down to the next one. There's 3 on the big long block that we're on, and zooms away. Next thing you know, this massive truck shows up around the corner. It's huge, like as big as a fire truck, maybe a little bigger. And this guy shows up, the foreman, as they called him. And turns out that we had a major sewage block. And at the time we called them, the sewage, the manholes, were filled up. He said it would have been about to my chest high because the 8-inch pipes of sewage down there were blocked. They had found a piece of concrete that somehow got stuck at the end of the road, and it took the better part of that 2 years for it to get clogged up. And finally it had enough, and those manholes were filling up. We happened to be the ones that found it. And as we went and reported it to the neighborhood and knocked on each other's doors, and let the neighborhood know, they started to realize that this was going on in their basements. And all of a sudden the stories started coming out. And we were excited, and as I talked to my daughter, she was like, it's a good thing we found it, because we helped save the whole neighborhood. And I was like, yeah, that's right, we saved the whole neighborhood, and helped a whole lot of people's houses be safe. And thank goodness for that team that came out and had the means by which to fix that challenge. And thank goodness we happened to be home. Thank goodness we happened to be in the place where we could fix it. There were so many great and positive things about it. I learned more about plumbing and sewage than you could possibly imagine. And I learned that they had some crazy machines. They had robots that went down into there and checked it out, and these amazing jet cleaners that would go and clean these sewage pipes out. I mean, it was really an educational experience. Ultimately, the neighborhood came together a little bit and realized that, hey, we should maybe talk about these kind of things more, because apparently there were a bunch of us on the block that were having challenges with our sewage and with the plumbing of our toilets. And nobody really had said anything. We just thought each of us thought it was us. And so it brought us all to a new place where we could actually think about, hey, you know what? Maybe we ought to communicate about that, because we could probably help each other in the overall whole. Sometimes getting rid of the waste requires going to the top floor, cleaning some stuff out there, making sure that's not the problem. Sometimes it requires going internal and figuring out what the heck's going on. Sometimes you just need to call for help. Sometimes you just need to call for help and hope the team shows up to clear out the blockages. And it was amazing. Within minutes of them sticking this massive claw down into there, pulling out this thing. And I took a picture of it. It was literally this piece of concrete that was like this big. And the guy said, he had no idea how it got down there, because there's not really any way for it to have gotten through the pipes. And honestly, that had been happening for a couple years, and we had noticed it for a long time. And I just wonder, for many of us in our own world, in our own system, how many times we have one of these blockages. We have no idea how it got there. We have no idea how it got into our system, but sometimes it takes years for that to block up and actually come to a place where, the sewage is coming out the wrong direction. All the waste is coming the way you don't want it to come. And all of a sudden it hits the fan, and we look at it sometimes and we look at all the negative that is coming from it. And in that moment, if we can learn to find the positive, if we can learn to actually give it new meaning, we might actually be able to just get that thing unblocked, call for some help, get a little extra assistance, clear up the blockages, help the people around us, and take our world and our place to a different level. Turns out there was nothing wrong with our plumbing. In fact, it all works fine, and everything in our system and in the entire neighborhood system works great now. What in your world is blocking you? What in your world has blocked up the system and the waste can't get out? Are you at a place where it's just so far gone that you need to call for some help? Because it might just be as simple as somebody that understands how it all works to come in, use that big claw, pull out the block, and go, here you go. Let's go. It's time to move forward. Guys, I hope this has helped. It was an incredible experience for me. It was educational. It was freeing. And I hope you learned a little bit from the story as well, that maybe will help you. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Take care.
Hey lifers, we expect upgrades to the base operating functions of the things like our phones, cars, and even refrigerators. Why then has it not been made a priority that we upgrade the operating systems of our emotional states? We dance around the subject of emotional mastery from a young age. We have so much more knowledge in today's world, yet we're still teaching outdated methods of emotional education, if any are being taught at all. It's time for a change. It's time for an upgrade to our emotional education. Let me help you learn how to do that. Pick up your free copy of Every Minute at everyminutebook.com.